I know. My son told me, not the white suit, Dad! They're gonna think that you're like that old dude in Jurassic Park who brought back the T-Rex. The thing is, my stories do bring back the past, but they're shaped to show a better future. The story I'd like to tell you today is about how to reboot your childhood curiosity, which can be very useful in these disconnected days. So please, take it as a gift. It came to me from Mikhail Gorbachev. Remember him? Gorby. Last leader for the Soviet Union. Helped bring down the Berlin Wall and the Cold War. Mikhail Gorbachev changed the world back in the late 1980s. But he couldn't reform his own country. And after an attempted coup in 1991, he was removed from power. Never stopped advocating for peaceful solutions, though. And when he passed away about a year and a half ago, he had no idea that he'd given me this gift. But as I look around at our polarized landscape, I'm telling you, this gift is more valuable than ever. So let me take you back to February 2008, New Orleans. Gorbachev is in town to speak about abolishing nuclear weapons. I'm sitting in a hotel lobby waiting to meet him. I got an hour and a half to ask him any question I want in order to extract his wisdom for Esquire magazine. Done my research, well prepared, ready to go. Phone rings. It's the publicist. Cal, yeah, you know what's coming. Cal, sorry to tell you, but your time with Mr. Gorbachev is going to be cut short. Now I'm concerned because I need, at the very least, 45 minutes in order to pull this off. How much time have I got? 10 minutes. 10 minutes? I can't make this work in 10 minutes. That's impossible. You promised. Cal. A lot of very important people have been added to the list to see Mr. Gorbachev. Do you want the time or not? Well, of course I take the time, but as I hang up the phone, I'm feeling worse and worse and worse because I know I'm going to walk in that room. We're going to shake hands, exchange pleasantries, be seated. That's 2 minutes right there. Plus, my questions got to be translated into Russian, and his answers back to English. That's another 2 minutes right there. This interview is down to 6 minutes before it even starts. But can only do your best. And I can only be grateful for the obstacle because it forced me to think of the right question. And it taught me that the best questions make the person asked just as curious about the answer as you are, maybe even more curious, which brings me to a deeper point about curiosity. Look what happens to it. You're 4 years old, you're asking more questions than at any other point in your life. No scientific papers are needed to prove this. Just ask any mom or dad in the room. Why? Then kindergarten comes. And the kids are told, you can't just blurt out your questions. You got to raise your hand. Well, now the hands are going up. They're all excited. Not for long, though. The enthusiasm dims over time. By junior high, not that many hands are going up. And the pattern continues even into the working world. Get a first job in a situation you don't quite know what to do, you don't understand. Do you ask the question in front of everybody and let everybody know you don't understand? Or do you remain silent? Every time you don't ask the question. It's like throwing dirt over it. Your childhood curiosity is always going to be there for you, but you can bury it. All I can say is, I hope that everybody in this room, if they need it, can reach and grab that childhood curiosity the way I grabbed it when that publicist escorted me into the conference room to meet Gorbachev. And there he was, Gorby. He had that wine-stained birthmark on his scalp. He's about 77 years old, and I'm looking at him, and I know he's expected my first question to be about Ronald Reagan, nuclear weapons, world events. But I look right in his eyes, and I say, "What's the best lesson your father ever taught you?" He's surprised. Surprised in a pleasant way. Doesn't say anything. He looks up and to the right. He's searching. And then it's almost as if he could see a movie of his childhood playing on the ceiling. And he starts to tell a story of when he was a boy. And his dad got called to fight in World War II. Now, the Gorbachevs lived on a farm, and he's describing the trip from the farm to the town to see the dad off in great detail, and my brain is screaming, "Wrong question!" This interview is going to be over before the Gorbachevs even get to town. But they do get to town. And when they do, Mr. Gorbachev buys everybody some ice cream. And Gorbachev is remembering the aluminum cup that it was served in. He's talking about this cup of ice cream as if it's resting in the palm of his hand. And the more he talks about this ice cream, the more we both have the realization that this cup of ice cream is the reason he was able to make peace with Ronald Reagan and end the Cold War. Because this cup of ice cream contained the memory of that moment, the dread that he might never see his father again. Gorbachev and I look up at each other and we're thinking, man, this is deep. Just then, knock on the door. It's the publicist. "Mr. Gorbachev, time for the meeting will have to conclude." "No," Gorbachev said. "I want to talk to him." Publicist is a little shocked, and she backs out the room. Conversation continues, goes deeper. The more questions I asked that made Gorbachev curious, the more questions that he wanted to hear. 30 minutes. Twice the publicist knocked to try to stop the interview. Only after that 30 minutes did she come into the room in a panic and say, "Mr. Gorbachev, Cal, please, there's a long line of people out the door to see Mr. Gorbachev. The mayor's out there. The day was planned to the minute. I don't even know how we're going to fit everything in. Please." And Gorbachev looks at me with this grin and just puts up his shoulders and says, "Hey, what can I do?" Well, my curiosity had gotten me the time to fill out that article. It was a huge success. And when I thought back on why, I realized if I hadn't aimed my first question for the heart, I never would have gotten that insight. If I'd gone on in that room and asked a canned question, I would have gotten a canned answer. Interview would have been over in 6 minutes, and I never would have known what was possible. So that's the gift I'd like to leave everybody with. If you need to make a connection, aim your first question for the heart. Follow the heart to the head, and then follow the heart and the head on a pathway to the soul. Oh, no, I'm not done. Oh, no, don't get me off here. I'm just getting started. Oh, man. We're going to need that because the connections that human beings have made over centuries are melting away like ice in the Arctic. And I saw this coming right before the pandemic. I was speaking at a business school, and afterward, a graduate student comes running up and says, Cal, I got to tell you about this app I'm building. What's it do? Well, you know how at conferences, there are tables in the hallways, and people sit, and they're waiting for the next meeting? Well, my app will tell them who they're sitting next to. And that way, they can text each other. And I said, well, couldn't they just turn and say, hey, how you doing? And she said, but they wouldn't. Which brings me to the story about a guy on a bus headed to the Golden Gate Bridge. This was before the days of the safety netting. He's got terrible voices in his head. And he's noticeably crying on this packed bus. And he's looking for a sign. And he says to himself, if one person comes to me and says, are you okay? Can I help? Then I won't do it. Bus gets to the Golden Gate Bridge. Nobody asks. He gets out and he's walking back and forth 40 minutes. Then he jumps. It's the height of a 25-story building. And as he's falling, he realizes he's just made a huge mistake. 4 seconds later, he crashes into the water at 75 miles an hour, goes down, fractures vertebrae, and now he's in the fight of his life in this frantic water, gasping for air through his asthma. And then he goes down. Something comes underneath him, and he thinks, is that a shark? But he doesn't get bit. It keeps lifting him up to the surface. And it keeps him at the surface for 12 minutes until the Coast Guard boat came and rescued him. He later became a friend of mine. His name is Kevin Hines. He's partly responsible for the safety netting under the Golden Gate Bridge right now. Goes around the world, talks to people considering suicide. Why? Because a sea lion came underneath him and lifted him to the surface and held him there. A sea lion could ask the question, can I help? But humans couldn't. It all comes down to this. I've interviewed the icons who've shaped the last 75 years of world history. You wonder, what do they have in common? Serena Williams, Robert De Niro, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Nelson Mandela. Every single person I've ever met who has done something great in this world has found a profound way to connect. We now live in a world where people are working remote in silos within silos, often feeling detached. And I knew the first time I did a workshop at a company that was trying to bring together its remote workers, that something was up here, because one of those people said to me, you know, when I talk to these people on Zoom and I watch them and I don't know them, and they say something I don't like, I don't trust them. What is going to be lost when authentic connections disappear? Trust. But it gets more complicated. Enter AI. It can create images out of photos that were never snapped. It can generate videos out of things that never happened. We're soon going to be walking to an age where we won't be able to believe our own eyes or our own ears. Now, I love a lot of things that AI is doing, but let's not be bedazzled. Let's not look away from the question, what is going to hold us together in an artificial world without trust? One thing, our authentic human connections, and that's it. How does this apply to everybody in this room? I have a hunch that when you're driving home, when you're heading home, you're going to be thinking about somebody you want to connect with. Reach for your curiosity. Ask a question to the heart. Listen. Tell a story. Connect. You'll be a better person, and the world will be a better place. Thank you.